The little puppies trembled, begging the wolf for help. What happened next made everyone cry. Can your worst enemy become your only savior? This question doesn't cross the mind of someone fighting for their life. For 4 little puppies, the world had shrunk to 2 things: unquenchable hunger and all-consuming fear. Their mother, a mongrel cross between a sheepdog and a stray, had not returned. They had been waiting for her for 3 days in the dusty basement of an abandoned cottage on the outskirts of the village of Sosnovka. The familiar smell of milk was replaced by the acrid smell of decay from old rags. The whimpering of the weakest of them grew quieter and quieter. The largest, with a black spot on his back, nudged his brothers and sister with his nose, trying to awaken their will to live. But his strength was also leaving him. Finally, driven by despair, he crawled out from under the house onto the grass parched by the heat and froze. Ahead, beyond the crooked fence, it began. The forest. Strange, dense, full of unfamiliar rustles and smells. The forest beckoned with its coolness and at the same time frightened him to the point of trembling. There was no other choice. Staggering, he took his first step into the unknown. The other 3 whimpered and followed him. Before we continue, let us know which city you are from. We are interested to know where our videos are being watched. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your rating. This motivates us to make new and interesting videos. Well, let's get started. Their journey was short. Their weak paws got tangled in the roots, and dry branches scratched their delicate skin. They huddled together at the bottom of a shallow ravine overgrown with ferns. This place seemed like a shelter to them, but they didn't know that this was foreign territory. The owner of this part of the forest moved silently, stepping as only those who know the forest as their home and hunting grounds can. An old wolf, whom the villagers had never seen, but whose invisible presence could be sensed from the occasional tracks, froze at the edge of the ravine. His nostrils caught a familiar and hated scent, the scent of a dog. An instinct honed over hundreds of generations demanded one thing: eliminate the competition. He was old, his front right paw ached from the memory of a steel trap, and easy prey would be very welcome right now. He took a step forward, ready to pounce. But what he saw at the bottom of the ravine made him stop. 4 trembling balls of fur. They didn't growl, bark, or bare their teeth. They just huddled together and whimpered so softly and pitifully that the sound pierced the armor of his animal hatred. It wasn't a challenge. It was a plea. 100 kilometers from that ravine, in a stuffy Moscow office, Andrei Vorontsov stared at his computer screen. But he didn't see lines of code. He saw the eyes of a dog, the same dog he had accidentally wounded while hunting 3 years ago. The dog had survived, but its frightened yelps still haunted his dreams. Since then, his prized rifle had been gathering dust in a safe. The trip to the village of Sosnovka, to an old country house, was his attempt to escape the city and himself. His wife Lena, well-groomed and anxious, found it difficult to cope without the usual comforts and was frightened by every rustle in the garden at night. "Andrei, are you sure this is a good idea? There's hardly any cell service here," she said every evening. Only their 10-year-old son, Misha, was truly happy. He spent all day outside, exploring abandoned lots and dreaming. More than anything in the world, he wanted a dog. "Dad, when we go back to the city, can we get a puppy? Please," he would ask. Andrei just sighed. He wasn't sure he was ready to take on such a responsibility again. Misha, breaking his parents' rules, sneaked back to the abandoned cottage where, according to his calculations, the puppies should have been. He brought with him a piece of sausage he had hidden from breakfast. But the basement was empty. Only the lonely smell of a dog and despair hung in the air. The boy walked around the house and saw something on the dusty path that made his heart sink. Small, barely visible footprints. A trail of footprints leading straight into the forest. Misha stood there, unsure what to do. The forest was big and scary, and his mom had strictly forbidden him from going there alone. But the thought of tiny puppies, all alone in this huge forest, overcame his fear. He took a few steps along the path, peering into the dark thicket. Suddenly, he heard the crack of a dry branch very close by. The boy froze, peering into the thick undergrowth. Two yellow eyes were staring at him from behind the trunk of an old pine tree. They didn't blink, they just stared. Misha froze. He didn't know what it was, but he felt a primal, bone-chilling terror. Slowly, without taking his eyes off the yellow eyes, he backed away, then turned and ran for the house as fast as he could, not caring where he went. At night, a thunderstorm broke out. The sky split with a deafening crack, and streams of water poured down on the dry ground. In a ravine, under the flimsy shelter of an old tree's roots, 4 puppies huddled together in a trembling heap. Each clap of thunder made them shiver and whimper pitifully. They were sure it was the end. Suddenly, a huge shadow loomed over them. In the dim light of the lightning, they saw it. Huge, wet, with gray fur on its muzzle. A wolf? He was looking for shelter from the storm and had come here. The puppies froze, waiting for their inevitable death. The weakest of them let out a thin, broken squeak, a sound of absolute terror and submission. And then something strange happened. The wolf did not bare his teeth. He looked at them intently, tilting his head to one side as if listening to something. Then he sighed heavily, steam rising from his fur, and lay down. He simply lay down a few meters away from them, covering the entrance to their makeshift den from the slanting rain with his body. His huge body, smelling of the forest and rain, radiated calm. And for the first time in many days, the puppies stopped trembling with fear. They were now only shivering from the cold. But for the first time, they felt safe next to their worst enemy. In the morning, Andrei Vorontsov stepped out onto the porch. The air after the storm was clean and fresh. He was troubled by Misha's story yesterday about the yellow eyes in the forest. Most likely, it was a fox, or even just a figment of his imagination. But something made him uneasy. As a former hunter, he knew how to read tracks. Walking along the edge of the forest, he stumbled upon what he had feared, a clear, large wolf paw print in the muddy clay. Judging by the depth and slight smearing on one edge, the paw was injured. It was the track of a large, lame male. Andrei's alarm grew. Foxes were one thing, but a wolf roaming near the village was quite another. He returned home and took out of his backpack something he always carried with him out of old habit. A camera trap, a small camouflaged camera with a motion sensor. "Lena, I'm going to walk through the forest and set up the camera. We need to find out what kind of animal it is and how often it comes here," he said to his wife, trying to keep his voice calm. He found the ravine that Misha had mentioned. The spot was perfect for observation. After attaching the camera to a tree trunk and camouflaging it with branches, he returned to the cottage, tormented by a sense of foreboding. The night passed. In the morning, Andrei, without waiting for breakfast, went to check the trap. He took out the memory card, inserted it into his laptop, and opened the folder with the files. The first few dozen night shots were blank. A mouse ran by. A moth flew by. And then suddenly, Andre leaned forward, staring at the screen. In the grainy black and white image, he appeared at the edge of the ravine. A wolf. Huge, even bigger than Andre had imagined. Its limp was clearly visible. It was holding something in its teeth. Andre's heart froze. He was about to witness a bloody massacre. The wolf descended into the darkness where the little calves were huddling. But he did not attack. He carefully laid his prey, a hare, on the ground, looked at the puppies, turned around, and silently walked away. A few minutes later, the puppies timidly crept up to the carcass and began to eat greedily. Andre rewound the video again and again. His brain refused to believe what he had seen. It broke all the laws of nature, all his knowledge about these predators. At that moment, Lena entered the room. "Well, what's going on? Did you see your fox?" she asked. Andre silently turned the laptop screen toward her. Lena screamed and recoiled. Is that a wolf? Andre, it's right here, next to us, with Misha. We have to leave, immediately." Her voice broke into a scream. Andre looked at his wife's frightened face, then at the incredible images on the screen. Leave and abandon everything? Or stay and try to understand what kind of miracle he had witnessed? His hunting instincts screamed danger. But something inside him, something he had buried 3 years ago, told him that something much more complicated than mere animal cruelty was going on here. "Andre, we're leaving. Today." Lena's voice was sharp, almost shrill. She stood with her hands pressed against her chest, looking at her husband as if he had lost his mind. "You show me this monster that roams 2 steps away from our son, and you want me to stay? What's wrong with you?" Andre slowly closed the laptop. He had expected this reaction, but her panic still hit him hard. "Len, calm down. Look again. He hasn't touched them. He feeds them. It's wrong, I know. But it's not aggressive." "Not aggressive?" Lena laughed hysterically. "It's a wolf, Andre. A predator. Maybe he's fattening them up so he can eat them all at once, or he's rabid. Hasn't that occurred to you?" The arguments were logical, ironclad. Any sane person in his place would already be packing his bags. But Andre couldn't. He couldn't just leave and leave this mystery of the forest unsolved. He couldn't abandon these puppies, who now had the most incredible protector in the world. At that moment, Misha peeked into the room, attracted by his mother's shouting. "Mom, Dad, what's going on?" His eyes darted fearfully from one parent to the other. Lena stopped short, trying to put on a reassuring smile, but it didn't work. Andre looked at his son, at his wide, honest eyes, and he made a decision. He wouldn't lie. He opened his laptop and turned it toward Misha. "Look, son. Stay calm." Misha came closer. A nighttime video appeared on the screen. A huge, dark silhouette descended into a ravine. Misha shuddered. "It's him. The one with the yellow eyes," the boy whispered. "Keep watching," Andre said quietly. Misha saw the puppies, saw the wolf leave them food and walk away. The boy's reaction was completely different from Lena's. There was no fear in his eyes. There was only boundless, childlike delight. "Dad, did he save them? Does he feed them?" "It looks like it," Andre nodded. "Then he's kind," Misha declared confidently. "Misha, he's not kind or evil. He's a wild animal. And that's very dangerous," Lena said sternly, but her voice no longer had the previous hysteria. She looked at her son, who saw a savior in a deadly predator, and her urban pragmatic logic failed her. The family was divided. Lena saw a threat, Misha saw a miracle, and Andre, a former hunter, stood in the middle. Understanding that both were right and feeling that he had to get to the bottom of the truth. The next day, Andre went back to the forest. He told Lena that he was just going to check the camera and keep his distance. He moved the camera trap to the opposite slope of the ravine to get a wider view. He was on edge all day. He tried to work, but his thoughts were there, in the forest. In the evening, when Misha was already asleep, he took out his laptop again. The new videos were even more striking. During the day, when the puppies, already a little bolder, were playing at the bottom of the ravine, a fox appeared from the bushes. The red predator clearly sensed easy prey. She slowly, crouching low to the ground, began to approach the smallest puppy. And at that moment, he emerged silently from behind a boulder. He was lame. He didn't growl or howl. He just stood there and stared at the fox. That was enough. The fox froze for a second, then tucked its tail between its legs and darted back into the bushes. The wolf stood there for a moment, watching her go, then disappeared into the thicket just as silently as he had appeared. He was their bodyguard, an invisible, silent guardian. Andre felt a chill run down his spine. This was no longer just abnormal behavior. It was conscious, purposeful protection. Meanwhile, in the village of Sosnovka, a storm was brewing. It all started small. Grandpa Zakhar, the grumpiest old man in the whole district, had lost a chicken. "They stole it right out of my yard, the bastards," he shouted in the small village shop, the only center of public life. Valya, the shop assistant, a woman who knew everything there was to know, shook her head sympathetically. "It's a fox, Zakhar Petrovich. There are so many of them." "What fox?" The old man wouldn't let up. "Did you see any tracks near the outskirts? As big as my palm. It's a wolf, a gray bandit." The word was out. It hung in the stuffy air of the store like smoke from a cheap cigarette. Someone remembered that last week a dachshund had gone missing from the summer cottages. Someone had heard howling coming from the swamp at night. A puzzle of rumors, fears, and speculation came together into a single, frightening picture. A wolf, near the village. There hadn't been one in 20 years. Panic is contagious. It spread from house to house, growing with new, terrifying details. People were no longer talking about one wolf, but about a whole pack. They said it wasn't afraid of people, that it was bold and hungry, and that something had to be done before disaster struck. Andre went to the store to buy bread and batteries for his camera trap. He unwittingly overheard this conversation. He stood at the counter and listened as Grandpa Zakhar, waving his arms, tried to convince Stepan, the local tractor driver, that something had to be done. "Stepan, you have a gun. What are you waiting for? Until he starts attacking the children?" "I don't have a license, Petrovich. I can't," Stepan said lazily. "What license when there's such a threat?" Another man interjected. "We need to call the district, the gamekeeper. Let them send a team. They'll round him up, and that'll be the end of it." Andre felt the blood drain from his face. Roundup. The word hit him like a shot. He knew what it meant. It wasn't hunting. It was a purge. With dogs, with flags, with no chance for the beast. He looked at those angry, frightened faces and knew they wouldn't calm down. They had already sentenced the wolf to death. And only he, Andre, was its sole, but utterly unconvincing, defender. How could he prove to them that this wolf wasn't a killer but a savior? That it was protecting puppies? They would just laugh in his face. They would call him the town madman. The clock began its countdown. He realized that he had very little time left to do something. But what? What could he do alone against an entire village gripped by fear? Andre left the store, clutching the bag of bread so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The words "roundup" and "brigade" rang in his head like an alarm bell. He had to do something. Returning to the cottage, he found Lena and Misha in the yard. Lena was hanging laundry, glancing anxiously at the edge of the forest, while Misha sat on the porch, whittling a stick. The boy looked up at his father. "Dad, what's wrong? Did something happen?" Andrei sat down next to his son. He knew that any wrong move now could lead to disaster. "Something happened, Misha. The people in the village want to kill the wolf." Misha jumped up. "Kill it? Why? He's a good wolf." "They don't know that. They're afraid. And they won't believe me if I tell them." Show them the video." The boy's eyes lit up with hope. Lena, who had overheard their conversation, came closer. Her face was a complex mixture of fear and sympathy. "Andrei, don't get involved. It's dangerous. They won't listen to you. You'll only make enemies." "Lena, I can't just sit here and wait for them to kill him. It's not right. What he's doing, I don't know what to call it. But it can't just be stopped with a gunshot." He looked at his wife with a pleading gaze. And Lena, this city woman, this anxious woman, suddenly saw in his eyes not stubbornness, but the very pain she had seen 3 years ago. The pain of realizing that something was irreparable. She sighed heavily. "All right. But be careful. Please." The decision was made. Andrei understood that going to the men in the village with a laptop was a lost cause. He needed authority. The only person who could listen to him was the chairman of the dacha community, Semyon Ignatievich, a retired colonel, a man of the old school, respected and judicious. Andrei found him in his garden, tying up tomato plants. "Semyon Ignatievich, it's urgent and very serious," Andrei began without preamble. He quickly but thoroughly explained the situation. The puppies, the wolf, the video evidence. Semyon Ignatievich listened silently, not looking up from his work. His face was impenetrable. When Andrei finished, the colonel straightened up, wiped his hands on his pants, and looked at him with a heavy gaze. "Vorontsov, are you out of your mind? A wolf feeds dogs? Don't tell me fairy tales. A wolf is a pest, and it must be eliminated if it poses a threat to the population. That's the law." "But it's not a threat," Andrei almost shouted. "I'll show you the video." "Video?" The chairman snorted. "On your computer? Maybe you edited it to cause a sensation? We know you city folks. You come here, film all kinds of nonsense, and then hype it up on the internet." Andrei realized he had lost. The wall of mistrust and ingrained stereotypes was impenetrable. To them, he was a stranger, a city weirdo whose words were worthless. Meanwhile, in the district center, the call from Sosnovka was answered. Hunter Petr Matveyevich, a heavy-set man with a weather-beaten face and tired eyes, listened to the emotional story about a pack of wolves terrorizing the village. He sighed. July was not a typical time for wolf activity near villages, but there were complaints, and they had to be addressed. Moreover, the beast could well have migrated from neighboring areas where fires were raging. He promised to take measures and hung up. The measures consisted of a team of 3 hunters he had known for many years. It was led by Yegor, an experienced but tough and cynical tracker for whom hunting was first and foremost a job, not entertainment. "Be in Sosnovka first thing in the morning," Matveyevich told them on the phone. "There are complaints about a wolf. One large, most likely. Check the information, and if it's confirmed, eliminate it. I'll write you a permit." For Yegor and his team, it was a routine job. No sentimentality. There was a problem, and it had to be solved. Quickly and efficiently, with a bullet. Andrei returned to the dacha feeling depressed. Plan A had failed miserably. Only Plan B remained, risky, almost insane. "Misha, get ready. Let's go to the forest," he said quietly. "Andrei, are you crazy? Where are you going?" Lena exclaimed in alarm. "We won't go near it. I just want to get the puppies. If they're not in the ravine, the wolf won't have any reason to go there. Maybe he'll go deeper into the forest and no one will find him." It was their only chance to save the wolf by taking away his reason for staying there. Lena looked at her husband, then at her son, whose eyes burned with determination. She realized she couldn't talk them out of it. "Take the phone, and if anything happens, call me right away. Do you hear me, Andrei?" He nodded. Father and son took the empty cardboard box and headed toward the forest. They walked cautiously, constantly looking back. When they reached the ravine, Andrei motioned for Misha to stop and went ahead to take a look. His heart was pounding. The puppies were there. They were sleeping, huddled together in their den under the roots. There was no sign of the wolf. "Stay here and wait. I'll be quick," Andrei whispered to his son and began to climb down into the ravine. The puppies, sensing a stranger's scent, woke up and whimpered fearfully. They huddled in the farthest corner. Andrei moved slowly, without sudden movements, muttering something quietly and reassuringly. He knew that wild puppies could bite out of fear. He reached out to the nearest one. It growled, trying to look fierce, but its tail was tucked between its legs. Andrei carefully picked it up by the scruff of its neck and put it in the box. Then the second, the third. The last one remained. The largest, the one with a black spot. It had burrowed so far under the root that he couldn't reach it. Andrei knelt down, trying to lure it out. And at that moment, he heard a quiet growl. But the growl wasn't coming from under the root. It was coming from above, from the edge of the ravine. Andrei slowly raised his head. The lame one was looking at him. The wolf was standing only 10 meters away. The hair on its neck was bristling. Its lips were raised, exposing yellowish fangs. It did not attack. It just stood there and warned. "Don't touch," his gaze said. Andrei froze, holding the box with 3 whimpering puppies in his hands. He found himself between the enraged predator and the last puppy, which was the cause of this anger. Above, behind the trees, Misha froze in horror, seeing everything. The situation became deadly dangerous. Time stood still. Andrei Vorontsov stood at the bottom of the ravine, a few meters from the enraged wolf, and realized that he had made a terrible mistake. He had intruded. He had tried to take something away. In the eyes of the lame wolf, there was none of the wise weariness that Andrei had seen in the video. They burned with the cold fire of an owner defending his pack, his family. "Okay, quiet, I'm leaving," Andrei whispered, addressing himself more than the beast. He didn't dare make any sudden movements. Slowly, very slowly, he began to back toward the slope of the ravine, clutching the box with the whimpering puppies to his chest. The wolf did not move, watching him with a heavy, unblinking gaze. Each step was difficult for Andrei. He could feel the tension in the animal's muscles, ready to pounce at any moment. When he reached the top, he grabbed the frozen Misha by the hand, and they quickly, but without running, walked away. Only when they were at a safe distance did Andrei stop and catch his breath. His hands were shaking. "Dad, would he have attacked you?" Misha whispered. "I don't know, son. But I wouldn't want to find out. He was protecting his last puppy." Plan B failed even more spectacularly than Plan A. Not only did they fail to save the puppies, but they also convinced the wolf once and for all that humans were a threat. The next morning, an old UAZ drove up to the store in Sosnovka. 3 men in camouflage got out, carrying rifles in holsters. It was Yegor's crew. Yegor himself, wiry and taciturn, immediately headed for the men gathered at the store. "Well, tell me, where is this wolf running around?" he asked bluntly. Feeling supported, Grandpa Zakhar immediately began his story, gesturing animatedly. Yegor listened silently, nodding occasionally. "Are there any tracks?" he interrupted. "Yes, of course there are. Stepan will show you." Tractor driver Stepan, important in his new role, led the hunters to the outskirts of the village. Yegor crouched down next to the very footprint that had so frightened the village. Yes, it's a wolf's footprint. A large male, old, most likely, and lame. He stood up and looked around the edge of the forest. "All right, let's get to work. Don't make any noise, stay in your houses, and tie up your dogs." His words sounded like an order that was not to be questioned. The local men looked at the professionals with respect and some fear. Salvation had arrived. Justice would prevail. Andrei saw the hunters arrive from the window of his cottage. His heart sank. It was the beginning of the end. He went out onto the porch. Lena silently approached and stood next to him. She understood everything without words. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. "I'm going to go to them." "Andrei, don't. They won't listen to you. These are different kinds of people." "I have to try. One last time." He took his laptop with him. It was his only trump card, albeit a nearly useless one. He found the group at the edge of the forest. They were getting ready, unholstering their guns, checking their radios. Yegor, seeing a man walking toward them with a laptop under his arm, raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Who are you?" he asked gruffly. "My name is Andrei Vorontsov. I'm a summer resident. I know you're here because of the wolf." "Yeah, so what?" Yegor looked at him mockingly. "This wolf isn't dangerous. It doesn't attack people. I want to show you something." Andrei opened his laptop and started the video. The one where the wolf feeds her puppies. The hunters crowded around, peering curiously at the screen. For a few seconds, there was silence. One of Yegor's assistants, a young guy, was the first to break it. "Wow, Matveyich, look what's going on." But Yegor didn't share his amazement. He looked at Andrei with cold, appraising eyes. "And what does that prove?" "That he's rabid. A normal wolf doesn't behave like that. It's an anomaly. And any anomaly in the forest is a potential threat. Maybe he's feeding them so he can eat them all when they grow up. Or maybe he's not right in the head, and next time he'll bring a hare not to the puppies, but to your son to play with. Haven't you thought about that?" The arguments were the same as Lena's and the chairman's. But coming from this man, they sounded like a death sentence. "We don't know this animal," Yegor continued, "so we're assuming the worst. Our job is to keep people safe, not to study the strange behavior of predators. So thank you for the information. It only confirms that the beast must be eliminated. It's unpredictable." He slammed the laptop lid shut with such force that Andrei flinched. "Go home, you country bumpkin, and don't get in the way of our work." Yegor turned away, making it clear that the conversation was over. Andrei stood in the middle of the field, humiliated and crushed. He had lost on all fronts. Now all that was left was to wait for the sound of gunshots. The hunters wasted no time and entered the forest. Yegor quickly found fresh tracks leading to the ravine. "He's around here somewhere," he said into the radio. "Spread out. Surround the ravine. Work quietly." The hunt began. They moved like shadows, professionally and in unison. Andre returned to the cottage and couldn't find a place for himself. He paced from corner to corner, unable to do anything. Misha sat on the sofa, hugging his knees, and said nothing. He understood everything. Suddenly the boy raised his head. "Dad, what if we scare them? So they run away? The wolf and the puppies?" The idea was crazy, but at least it was an idea. "How?" Andre asked, stopping. "With noise. They're afraid of noise. We can go around the other side of the forest and shout, or bang on things. They'll hear us and run away from the hunters." It was a desperate, childish plan, but there was a logic to its simplicity. Distract them, create panic, give them a chance to escape in the other direction. "Lena, let's go. We'll stay far away. We'll just make some noise." Lena looked at him, then at her son. There were tears in her eyes. She nodded. Father and son ran toward the forest again, but now from the other side, making a wide detour to get behind both the hunters and their supposed prey. The lame dog sensed them long before they appeared. The smell of iron, gunpowder, and foreign, aggressive confidence. He understood everything at once. Danger had come for him. He darted toward the ravine. 4 pairs of frightened eyes stared at him. He let out a short, commanding growl. The puppies, who had already learned to understand his signals, jumped out of their hiding place. He led them away from the ravine into the thickest, most impenetrable part of the forest, where humans rarely ventured. But the hunters were experienced. Yegor already understood the wolf's maneuver. "He's taking the puppies away. He's heading for the swamp. Cut off his escape," he commanded into the radio. The circle was closing in. The wolf could sense it. He knew that with 4 slow puppies, he couldn't get away. They were his anchor, his weakness. And then he made a decision. Suddenly, he stopped, pushed the puppies into a thick raspberry bush, ordered them to lie still, and ran. But he didn't run from the hunters. He ran across their path in a completely different direction, leaving a clear, visible trail behind him. He was distracting the hunters. He sacrificed himself to give these small, helpless dogs, who for some unknown reason had become his pack, a chance at life. At that moment, a cry rang out from the other side of the forest. It was Andre shouting, "Hey, hey!" he yelled, banging a stick against a tree. Misha echoed him. They tried to make noise, but they didn't know that their desperate attempt at rescue was the final act in this forest drama, leading the hunters straight to the false trail left for them by the lame one. The cries and banging confused Yegor for only a moment. "What the hell is going on?" he muttered. But then he saw them. Fresh, clear tracks leading away from the swamp toward an old clearing. The tracks were single and very fast. "There he is. He's getting away," Yegor shouted into the radio. "Drop the puppies. Everyone follow me. He's heading for open ground." The trap had snapped shut. The lame one had led them exactly where he wanted them to go, away from the raspberry bush where 4 little balls of fur were sitting, holding their breath. Andre and Misha continued to shout, not knowing that their noise only confirmed to the hunters that they were heading in the right direction. They thought they were scaring the beast away, but in fact they were driving it into a trap, like beaters on a real hunt. The wolf flew out to the edge of an old clearing overgrown with tall grass. There was nowhere to hide here. He stopped for a second, looked back toward the forest, as if saying goodbye. And at that moment, the first shot rang out. The bullet hit the ground next to him, sending up a fountain of dust. The wolf lunged forward, but his old diseased paw let him down. He didn't run as fast as he had in his youth. A second shot rang out. A sharp, burning pain pierced his side. The lame wolf stumbled but remained on his feet. He continued to run, drawing his pursuers further and further away. He could no longer hear the cries of Andre and Misha. There was a ringing in his ears, and red circles swam before his eyes. He ran on pure instinct, on the last will to live, which was no longer his life, but the lives of those who had been left behind. The third shot was accurate. Yegor was a professional. The wolf collapsed into the grass as if he had been cut down. He twitched once, then twice, and fell silent. It was all over. The silence that descended on the forest was deafening. Andre and Misha fell silent when they heard the shots. They realized they were too late. The terrible final silence spoke for itself. "Let's go, son. Home," Andre said hollowly. He took Misha by the hand, and they trudged back to the cottage, feeling devastated and guilty. When they came out of the forest, they saw them. The hunters were coming from the clearing. Yegor and his two assistants were dragging something heavy and gray. They threw the wolf's body next to their UAZ in full view of the entire village. The residents of Sosnovka poured out of their houses and looked at the dead predator with cautious curiosity. Grandfather Zakhar came closer and even poked the animal with the toe of his boot. "There he is, the bandit. He got what he deserved," he said with satisfaction. Andre stood at a distance, holding his son by the shoulder. He looked at the body of the lame one, huge, powerful even in death, with a gray muzzle and closed eyes. He looked at its right front paw with an old scar from a trap, and he felt a lump rising in his throat. Misha broke free from his father's grip. He ran closer, pushing aside the onlookers. He stopped a few steps away from the dead wolf and just stared at it. At the one who was not a monster to him, but a miracle. At the one who had saved and protected him. Misha did not know all the details, did not understand the complexity of animal instincts, but he felt the main thing, the blatant injustice. And he cried. He did not scream or sob. Large, hot tears simply rolled down his cheeks. He cried for his hero, who had been killed by people. His childish crying in this crowd of adults, satisfied with their safety, sounded like a death sentence. Lena, who had run out of the house, rushed to her son and hugged him, leading him away. Yegor, who was just lighting a cigarette, dropped it. He looked at the crying boy, then at the dead wolf, and something like doubt flashed in his cynical eyes for a moment. But only for a moment. He took a drag and exhaled the smoke. Work is work. That same evening, the Vorontsovs left. They packed their things in silence. The atmosphere of relaxation was irretrievably poisoned. When the car was almost ready, Andre suddenly stopped. "Wait for me here." He picked up the empty box, the very same one, and went back into the forest. He didn't know why he was going. Maybe it was out of respect. Maybe it was guilt. He reached the ravine. It was quiet. He looked under the tree, not expecting to find anyone there. But they were there, all four of them. They huddled together, trembling with fear and cold. The last puppy, the one with the black spot that the wolf had protected, returned to its family. Andre slowly knelt down. He reached out his hand again. This time, the puppy didn't growl. It crawled out of its hiding place and timidly licked his finger. 10 minutes later, Andre returned to the car. He opened the back door and placed the box with the 4 puppies wriggling inside on the seat. Lena looked at him, then at the box, then at Misha's tear-stained but now hopeful eyes. She said nothing. She just got behind the wheel. Silence was a sign of agreement. 6 months passed. In a spacious city apartment, the grown dog, large with a black spot on his back, laid his head on Misha's knees as he read a book. 3 more dogs slept on a rug by the fireplace. They had grown strong and loyal. Andrei sat at the table and finished typing. It was not a work report. It was a story about an old lame wolf who taught him, a former hunter, what he had never been able to understand in his entire life. He finished the last sentence, saved the file, and sent it to a well-known online magazine. He did not know if his story would be published, but he had to tell it, so that his son's cries on that terrible day would not be in vain, so that the memory of Chrome would not fade away in the silence of the forest. He looked at his new dogs. They were a constant reminder, a reminder that the most important laws are not written in human codes, but in the heart, and that sometimes the wildest beast can be more human than humans. Do you think Andrei did the right thing by taking the puppies? Or was it interference in the natural course of events, which ultimately provoked the tragedy?